I keep replaying that moment in my head. Her voice, low but deliberate, cutting through the cluttered silence of the shop. This is just a game. She said it like she was daring me not to take it seriously. I wanted to laugh, or argue, or just ask her what the hell she meant. Instead, I stood there, half bent over an old carburetor, trying to act like my hands weren't shaking. The garage smelled of burnt oil and damp concrete. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped since morning, tapping against the thin tin roof like it was keeping count of every second I was wasting. But she didn't seem bothered by the weather or by me. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, her jacket still zipped even though the air inside was stifling. She looked at ease. That's what I noticed first. Most people come in here impatient, waving keys and receipts, asking how long, how much. She just stood there, quiet but confident, like time bent for her. Her hair, dark, streaked at the edges with something silver, was pulled back too loosely, strands falling forward as if they had a mind of their own. She didn't fix them. She let them stay where they were. I must have stared too long, because she tilted her head, meeting my eyes with the smallest smile. Not the kind that invites. Not the kind that dismisses either. The kind that asks, "Are you going to say something, or keep hiding behind that wrench?" I muttered something about her car, bad alternator, maybe a week before it'd die on her completely, but my words tumbled out too fast. She didn't interrupt, didn't nod, didn't even pretend to listen. She just watched me, like she was measuring how much of myself I'd accidentally give away. The silence stretched. I wiped my palms on my coveralls even though there was nothing there. And that's when she said it. "This is just a game." Her tone was flat, almost careless. But I felt it in my chest like she had just called my bluff. What game? The glances I thought I'd hidden? The way I lingered near the counter when she walked in? I wanted to ask her, but the words caught. So I told her the first thing that came out. Then why am I losing sleep? It wasn't smooth. It wasn't even meant to be said out loud. Her smile didn't change. Maybe it twitched, maybe it didn't. But she looked away first, brushing her hand across the dusty countertop, leaving a streak like she was erasing the moment. And then nothing. Just the hum of the rain, the smell of grease, the hollow quiet of two people not saying what they mean. She left with her receipt folded into her pocket, heels clicking faintly against the concrete as if each step was a decision. She didn't look back. Not once. But when I locked up that night, her words circled me again, low and sharp. "This is just a game." And my own reply, stupid, unpolished, truer than I meant it to be, kept echoing. Then why am I losing sleep? It wasn't the line that haunted me, though. It was the pause between us, the fraction of a second where I thought, maybe, she heard me. She came back 2 days later. Not for the alternator. I'd already fixed that, but with a different excuse. Something about a faint rattle, a sound she said she noticed when the road curved left. I checked. Nothing was wrong. Still, I let her stay. The garage was brighter that afternoon, sunlight sliding through the open bay door, catching on dust motes that floated like they had nowhere else to be. She leaned against the same counter as before, but this time she kept her coat unzipped. Her blouse was simple, plain even, but I noticed how she tugged at the cuff of her sleeve when she thought I wasn't looking. I worked slower than I needed to, pretending the inspection required more focus. The truth was, I wanted the minutes to stretch. I wanted to hear her voice again, the rhythm of her words, steady but never rushed. "Long day?" I asked without lifting my head from the engine. She gave a soft laugh, short and unguarded, the kind that slips out before someone remembers to hide it. "They're all long," she said, almost under her breath. I turned slightly, just enough to catch her profile. The sunlight cut across her face, and for the first time I saw something fragile there, something worn. She carried herself like someone who was used to holding steady, but the edges showed if you looked close enough. The faint shadows under her eyes, the way her fingers traced the countertop absent-mindedly, tapping once, then stopping. "You don't have to wait here," I offered. "It'll take a while." "I don't mind." She shifted her weight, arms crossed again, but not as tightly as before. Her guard was still there, but thinner. I nodded, pretending to adjust a hose that didn't need adjusting. Silence settled, thick but not uncomfortable. I wanted to ask her about her day, about why her laugh sounded like it hadn't been used in a while. But I didn't. Instead, I noticed the small things, how her hands, elegant but restless, brushed over her phone screen without unlocking it, how she pressed her lips together before speaking, as if weighing the worth of every word, how her gaze wandered not to me, but to the wide-open doorway, the world beyond it, as if something, or someone, was pulling at her from a distance. "You look tired," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp at first, then softer. There was a pause, long enough to feel deliberate, before she replied, "You notice too much." I wanted to tell her that noticing was all I had when it came to her. But I didn't. I just gave a small shrug and bent back over the engine, hiding the heat that rose in my chest. When I finally closed the hood, she was already by the door, sunlight spilling behind her. She turned slightly, her face unreadable, but her voice carried something lighter than before. "Maybe you'll fix the rattle next time." And just like that, she was gone again, leaving me with the quiet hum of machines and the strange, lingering ache of a woman who said one thing but meant another. The storm came suddenly, like the sky had been holding its breath all day and finally let go. I was closing the shop early, pulling the heavy door halfway down, when headlights cut through the rain and her car rolled in. She sat for a moment before stepping out, umbrella snapping open against the wind. "Alternator again?" I asked, forcing a smile as she shook off the water at the threshold. "No," she said, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. "Just thought you might still be here." The air between us shifted. For the first time, it wasn't about the car. I lifted the door back up, letting the rain drum louder against the tin roof. "Well, you timed it right. Another 10 minutes, and I'd be gone." She looked around the garage, then back at me, eyes sharp but unreadable. Guess I was lucky then. We stood there, both half wet, half smiling at nothing. The storm pressed closer, its thunder making the walls hum. I motioned toward the old workbench in the corner, the one with a kettle and mismatched mugs left behind by a previous mechanic. "Tea? It's not great, but it's hot." She hesitated, then nodded. The kettle hissed as the rain roared outside. I poured, hands clumsy, too aware of her sitting just a few feet away, legs crossed, shoulders still damp from the walk inside. Her jacket was draped over the back of the chair, leaving her arms bare. She rubbed at them absent-mindedly, and I wondered if she was cold or just restless. "This place feels like a secret," she said softly, watching the steam rise from her cup. "It kind of is," I admitted. "Not many people come by this late." Her eyes lifted to mine. For a heartbeat, neither of us looked away. I felt the pull of words I shouldn't say, the ones that would crack this fragile balance wide open. "I think about you too much. I don't know why you're here, but I want you to stay." But I didn't say them. She shifted, leaning just slightly forward. The space between us shrank. My hand brushed the edge of her cup as I set down the sugar, and for a second, it was enough. A warmth that had nothing to do with tea. Then her phone buzzed on the table. She froze before reaching for it, her expression tightening. A name flashed across the screen, too quickly for me to catch, but her silence told me enough. She let it ring once, twice, before pressing it face down against the wood. "I should go soon," she murmured, though she made no move to stand. The storm rattled the windows. My throat tightened. I wanted to ask her who it was. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to go. Instead, I just nodded, the words burning inside me, unsaid. She reached for her jacket, fingers brushing mine by accident. Neither of us pulled back right away. And then she did. It was late again, the kind of late where the street outside was empty and the clock above the counter ticked too loudly. She came by without warning, no excuse about the car this time. Just walked in, closed the door behind her, and leaned against it like she needed its weight to hold her steady. I wiped my hands on a rag, though I hadn't been working. "You shouldn't be here this late," I said, my voice lower than I meant. She gave a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Neither should you." We stayed like that. Two people in a garage too quiet for comfort, the hum of the fluorescent lights stretching every second into something heavier than time. I gestured toward the stool near the workbench. She sat. Not gracefully, not like before, but with a heaviness that startled me. She rested her elbows on her knees, head tilted down, fingers pressed together like she was trying to keep them from trembling. I didn't ask what was wrong. I just stood across from her, the silence pulling tighter, sharper, until it felt like another body in the room. Finally, she lifted her head. Her eyes found mine and held them. No hesitation this time. No half-smile to shield the truth. "What are we doing?" The words hit harder than if she'd shouted. Her voice was low, but steady, each syllable deliberate. I opened my mouth, closed it again. I didn't have an answer, not one that wouldn't sound ridiculous. She leaned back slightly, arms crossed, but not defensive, more like she was holding herself together. "I come here. You don't tell me to leave." And then nothing, like we're standing on the edge of something and both pretending it isn't there. I swallowed. The truth burned in my throat. Because I don't know how to step closer. Because I don't know what you'd do if I did. Instead, I said, maybe we're both just bad at pretending. That made her laugh. Quiet, almost bitter. She looked down at her hands, then back at me, eyes bright with something rawer than I'd seen before. "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" "No," I admitted. The word came out like a confession. The silence after was heavier than before, but not empty. It pressed against us, filling the room, the space between breaths. She stared at me for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she whispered, barely audible, as if speaking only to herself, "This isn't supposed to feel like rescue." I hadn't seen her in over a week. I told myself it didn't matter, that people came and went all the time, that she'd gotten her car fixed and had no reason to show up again. But the lie unraveled each night when I caught myself glancing at the doorway, listening for footsteps that never came. Then she returned, without warning, like before. Evening had already settled, the garage half dark, tools left scattered on the workbench. She carried a different weight this time, though. Not in her hands, but in her face. Something distant, tired. "I shouldn't be here," she said immediately, voice sharper than the words themselves. I set down the wrench I wasn't really using. And yet, her eyes flickered, almost a smile, then gone. She crossed the floor slowly, fingers brushing the edge of the workbench as she passed, like she needed something solid to tether her. She stopped beside a stool, but didn't sit. "Do you ever think about what people carry with them?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. "All the time," I said, though I wasn't sure she believed me. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her phone. Her hand lingered on the screen before she turned it toward me. A photograph lit up, grainy, old, maybe taken in bad light. A man, younger than her, smiling in a way that didn't look forced. She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. "He died 6 years ago," she said flatly, like a fact she'd repeated too many times. The air seemed to shift, the silence heavier. I looked at the man's face, then at hers. Something inside me tightened. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though the words felt thin, inadequate. Her thumb hovered over the photo before the screen dimmed to black. "You remind me of him." The words landed with a weight I couldn't name. Not a compliment, not an accusation, something in between. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I rubbed the back of my neck, swallowed against the dryness in my throat. "That's not something I can change." "I know." Her voice cracked just enough to betray the steel she usually carried. "And that's the problem. We didn't move." The rain had started again outside, soft at first, tapping against the glass. She finally sat down, elbows on her knees, head lowered. I wanted to reach across the space between us, but I stayed where I was. After a long silence, she exhaled, her words fragile, almost breaking apart. "I don't know if I'm here for you, or for a ghost." And I knew. Whatever I said next would either shatter the moment or keep it alive. The night she came again, there was no pretense. No car trouble, no questions. Just her, stepping into the dim garage while I was sweeping the floor, her presence filling the space more than the humming lights ever could. We didn't speak at first. She closed the door behind her, leaned against it like she had before, and I kept sweeping, the scrape of the bristles against concrete the only sound. Eventually, I set the broom aside. "You didn't call," I said. "I didn't know if I should," she answered. Her voice was steady, but softer than I'd ever heard it. I nodded, not pressing. She walked to the workbench, dragging her fingers across its scarred wooden surface as if tracing the lines of some hidden map. I watched her shoulders rise and fall, slower than usual, her guard lowered. Finally, she turned toward me. I don't want to keep pretending this is nothing. The words settled between us, heavy and bare. I took a step closer, then stopped halfway, leaving a respectful distance neither of us seemed willing to close. I don't know what this is, I admitted, but I know I can't ignore it. Her eyes flicked up, catching mine, holding them. For the first time, there was no push and pull, no shield. Just quiet truth. We stood there, the silence stretching but not suffocating. It wasn't tense anymore. It was steady, like something had finally exhaled. She moved first. Not much, just a shift in her stance, a small step that brought her within reach. Her hand rested on the edge of the bench, and without overthinking, I placed mine beside it, close enough that our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled away. It wasn't dramatic. No firework, no rush. Just warmth, simple and undeniable. She gave a small, tired laugh, one that carried both relief and sorrow. I don't know where this leads. Me neither, I said, but I don't want to walk away from it. Her eyes softened, and in that moment, I saw the weight she carried shift, just slightly, but enough to matter. We didn't kiss. We didn't move any closer. Instead, she leaned her forehead against my shoulder, as if testing whether I'd hold still. I did. My hand turned palm up, finding hers, and this time she let her fingers settle against mine. The garage was quiet except for the rain outside, steady and forgiving. We stayed like that, two people pressed into the kind of silence that doesn't demand answers, only presence. And in that silence, it was clear, this wasn't rescue, a replacement, or a game. It was simply us, finally unhidden, finally here. I think about that night more than I should. Not the details of the garage, not even the storm outside, but the way the silence felt different, how it stopped being heavy and turned into something I could rest in. It's strange, looking back. I thought love was supposed to arrive like lightning, loud and blinding, impossible to ignore. But with her, it came quietly. It slipped in between long pauses, half-finished sentences, and the brush of fingers that lingered just a second too long. She taught me something I didn't expect, that connection doesn't always need a name to matter. That sometimes, just sitting in the same room, breathing the same still air, can feel more intimate than any words. I used to lose sleep over her, over what this meant, what I was supposed to say, how it might all fall apart. I still lose sleep sometimes, but it's different now. Not from restlessness, but from replaying the way she laughed that first time, unguarded and surprised. The way she leaned her forehead against my shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. And she changed, too. I saw it in her eyes. She stopped holding herself so tightly, like the weight of her past was the only story she had to tell. She let me see the tiredness, the cracks, the unspoken grief. And in return, she let me stay, not as a replacement, not as a game, but as someone who chose her exactly as she was. If you ask me now what we are, I don't know if I could give you an answer. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the truth isn't in the labels, but in the quiet choice to keep showing up, again and again, even when neither of us has the script figured out. What I do know is this. When she said, "This isn't supposed to feel like rescue," she was right. Because it doesn't. It feels like something else. Something quieter, steadier. Something that doesn't demand, but simply stays. And maybe that's what love really is. Not the fireworks, not the declarations, but the willingness to sit in the silence together and let it be enough. So, if you're listening, I'll leave you with this. Have you ever met someone who made silence feel like home? Because that's what she gave me.